Hi everyone. So last week we talked about the Black Death. The plague happened not only in Europe but also in Asia and probably part of Africa. And this week we are going back to a topic that I myself am really interested in, which is the gender issue in history. So today we are going to read two sources. One by Christine de Pizan from the book of the City of Ladies. It seems interesting. And another is the trial of Jeanne d'Arc in France. So, first of all, a question about women's nature, the so called women's nature, comes to our sight. Uh, I want to explain that I myself believe that something like the nature of men or women, this kind of question is so essentialist and is kind of stupid. But we need to, as a historian, we need to put ourselves back to the time, back to the historical context, and try to think what people in the past uh, understand these kinds of questions and try to understand their minds, their ways of thinking. So we are here to explore the question of the nature of women. And I myself, I believe in people being culturally and socially constructed rather than being born as something like this or that. Okay, so you may notice from my last week's presentation that I kind of intentionally skipped a question from Decameron. That is the review question number two, the second part. So on page your source book on page 346, you can find. So how does Giovanni Boccaccio describe its effects on the plague's effects on the behavior of women specifically? And I want to kind of modify the question and put it like this way: judging from his description of women's behavior during the plague, how might Giovanni Boccaccio understand the nature of women? In other words, so from his account, from Boccaccio's account, how can we know Boccaccio's understanding of women? And when we turn to Christina de Pisan's account, the book of the City of Ladies, uh, we know that from the review questions, exact to be exact, question number one, that Christine was outspokenly critical of the ways that women were represented or described in another way of saying by the male authors of her own day, notably Boccaccio. So Christine de Pisan is not happy with the ways in which Boccaccio writes about women. So here we have an interesting comparison to make. So how does, by reading her account, so how does Christine de Pisan understand the nature of women? So does she understand the nature of women the same way as Giovanni Boccaccio or not? And how might she have responded to Boccaccio's account if she, for example, if she's not happy with what he's written in Decameron? So that is a set of comparative questions. And then when we come to the trial of Jeanne d'Arc, which of Joan of Arc, Jeanne d'Arc, and so why we have a question after finishing reading this excerpt, that why do the prosecutors or judges or whatever, the British, seem preoccupied with the issue of Jeanne's dresses and appearance, and what can we learn from that? So, normally in our today's society, or in other historical court cases, those evidence, those records, we know that normally people, the judge or the prosecutors, will ask the criminal or the suspect, at least, saying that why, for what reasons do you want to kill this guy? Do you want to hurt this victim? Want to kill, to murder this victim? And in what ways? And when and where? Okay, those are the most basic questions to be asked when, in the trial. But here in the excerpt, we find that the prosecutors, they are so interested in knowing, in questioning Joan of Arc about her dresses, about her appearance. So why do you think those prosecutors are so interested in this, in knowing this from uh, Joan of Arc? And another kind of open-ended question is about the sources. So in what other ways, as we have last week, in what other ways can legal testimony such as this one, this one about the trial of Jeanne d'Arc, can be used as a historical sources, as this historical source? And when we try to use sources like this, what will be the potential? We already know the advantages, of these trial records, but what will be the potential limitations of sources like this? So, in other ways, to put it in another way, so when we try to use this record, court record, a trial record, or let's say, uh, police investigation reports, something like that, written by the authorities. So, what should we know about them, and why, if you think that's necessary, why do we need to be cautious when we are trying to use sources like this written by the authorities? And that will be an open-ended question. Just try to consider all the possibilities and all the pitfalls and all the limitations of these sources, and write down your answer. Okay, so that's about this week's discussion questions, and see you next week.